Not barely at all. Jaylen Brown, the overwhelming NBA Finals MVP favorite. He's minus 350 after the big Game 3. Luka Doncic, if you think they can come back, is 25-1. But
are you liking Luka?
Not anymore.
Not after yesterday?
Not.
Thought maybe they get the win. This is the time to bet them.
Now it's over.
Just saying.
No team has ever come back from an 0-3 deficit. I think it's 156 series in the history of the NBA Finals. Erin,
Boston's probably already celebrating. Last night, they were probably out.
Celtics fans certainly are. I don't know if Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown are with some of their scar tissue, but I'm curious what your reaction was when you saw the price of Jaylen Brown reposted as the overwhelming MVP favorite.
I mean, I think he should be the favorite, but I didn't know it was going to be obviously by this much. Of course, you wish you had this ticket heading into the series. Now, I like the Celtics to win the series, and it came down to who's going to actually step up and be the most consistent. And I had said it's obviously Tatum or Brown. But then after Game 1, we were talking, Kristaps Porzingis, he flew down the odds boards. After Game 2, we're talking Drew Holiday. He's flying down the odds boards, but he only had 9 points in Game 3. I knew he'd finally have somewhat of a down game. But, I mean, Jayson Tatum, this guy's averaging 22 points, 9 boards, 7 assists. And Jaylen Brown, 24 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. They're both averaging 4 turnovers per game. So it's quite interesting to see, despite last game, knowing that Tatum had one more point. He had 31 points. Jaylen Brown had 30. I'm just surprised it's moved to this far, especially with one more game or a few more games that could potentially be played.
I agree with you. It's not that Brown shouldn't be the favorite, but by this much, I mean, what happens if Tatum scores 40 in the clincher?
That's exactly the point.
I still think, like, right now, if I haven't gotten involved in this market, I would not bet Jaylen Brown. I would
at that price now.
Maybe take a shot on Jayson Tatum, hope that he has a big game or that it goes back to Boston so there's more games to add to the ledger where he can separate or someone else can jump in.
Tatum's the only bet right now, plus 270. And if you're betting on Luka, please don't. They're not coming back. Let me save you some money.
All right, let's get into Game 4 then. We'll see if they can at least get one. I know they're not going to win 4, but maybe Dallas can get 1. Who knows? Because we've seen some crazy line movement. The public, the money, moving this around. At noon Eastern, Dallas was favored by 1.5. At 4 Eastern, then it went through 0 all the way to Boston favored by 1.5. Now here, just a bit past 6 Eastern, it's back to Dallas being a 1.5-point favorite. So
no hold numbers on our book either, just as a reminder. But nonetheless, surprising.
That's what we deal with. None of the 6 previous teams who trailed 3-0 in the NBA Finals over the last 30 seasons were favored in Game 4. So this is something unique with Dallas in that 0-3 hole being the favorite right now. We'll see if that moves around. What was your reaction when you saw this?
This is completely disrespectful. So disrespectful. What else do the Mavs have in them? Let's be honest. The Celtics, every single box they've been able to check. And this isn't one of those spots where it's like the Mavericks finally have their final punch. Kristaps Porzingis didn't play. Everyone thought, okay, well, that's going to be the easy Dallas Mavericks win. It wasn't. Okay, Kyrie Irving, he needs to have a big game. Okay, he did. He and Luka, they combined for 62 points. Still couldn't win. Okay, well, they need to shoot better from 3. They did. They still did not win. The role players are going to step up at home. That was the biggest argument as well. They did not. So there's just no way that I think they should be favored in this spot, even with Porzingis likely not playing. It doesn't make sense to me. I think it's purely disrespectful, even with them playing on the road. The Celtics have been a good road team. You think they're not sniffing the confetti falling? You think the Dallas Mavs, to some extent, aren't like, you know what, this series is a wrap? It already seems like they know that in a way.
I understand.
Crazier things have happened, maybe, but just historically speaking, no.
Yeah, I understand thinking that that's disrespectful to Boston because you laid out great points. Like, Dallas didn't play bad. They did better than what we had seen in Boston.
They did everything they were supposed to do or allegedly were going to do. Except the role players, seriously. I mean, what, Gafford and Jones, 8 points?
So to see them lose that game,
it's the finals.
Maybe if Luka doesn't foul out, maybe they're able to complete that comeback. Who knows?
But they've been making those comebacks. They go on those like 20-point runs, and they still can't. They keep it within a couple points, and then
Boston just knows how to keep them at arm's length at the right time. Let's talk about the total because we have seen nothing but unders. It keeps dropping, and the score keeps going under. Yeah, unfortunately, it hit hard for you in the first half. Game 4 posted at 211.5 right now. Any thoughts on that?
Game 4. Potential closeout game, you'd think defense would be the big thing. I don't think this is one of those spots in which you're thinking, okay, both these teams are going to go off. They're going to score a ton of points. I think it's going to be a situational play. So maybe you look at the first quarter at that total, you take that over. If you look at the first half, I advise you not to take the over, as I have been burnt multiple times throughout the series, except for game 1 when I said take the under. But the first quarter total is something I'd be looking at. Or if you feel more confident in Boston, their team totals at 105.5, which also feels pretty low because any of these guys can go off and have a big night. So I'd be looking at that more so than trusting the Dallas Mavericks to put up enough points to hang in there?
Right now, it's under or pass for me. I just, as you said, with Dallas facing elimination, I feel like they're going to try and lock in defensively. I don't know what to do. I'm not comfortable with the total in any way, shape, or form right now.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't like the total. I like
just keeps coming down. We just keep getting unders. I kind of want to go the other way, but there's nothing really compelling that makes
even zigzagging here. We talk about that a lot. We haven't been able to really do it in this series at all. We're like, yeah, you know what?
Boston and unders. Boston and unders. Maybe that's the bet for Game 4. Boston.
But no one likes unders. No, that's our problem.
Got a little sticky for the Celtics down the stretch, but Dallas could not overcome Luka Doncic fouling out with 4 minutes and 12 seconds remaining in last night's game. After a Kyrie Irving jumper cut the Celtics lead to 1, Boston outscored Dallas 13-7 the rest of the way. The Mavs missed all 3 of their 3-point attempts down the stretch. All right, for more on the Mavs and this impossible mountain to climb in the NBA Finals, we welcome in Tim MacMahon from Dallas. And we'll start the discussion, Tim, with the feeling of the team after they lose Game 3. Luka fouls out. The comeback falls short. What's going on inside that locker room?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of talk about you got to believe, that's Luka Doncic's standard line. But today almost felt like pre-exit interviews. I mean, there's been 156 teams that have gone down 0-3 in a series. We've yet to see one come back to win the series. And, Luka at one point was talking about how much he can learn from these finals. And then he stopped himself and he said, but it's not over yet. They still have to win another game, and, gave the old "we got to believe" line. Kyrie Irving, again, talking a lot of big picture stuff. And then he said, but it really comes down to pride and trying to put our best foot forward. There's a huge difference just in the feeling of being swept and of at least getting a game. That's what the Mavericks are playing for right now, because, look, they can be realistic. The odds of them winning this series are itsy-bitsy, teeny-weeny.
I haven't heard that since I was a kid. But at least Luka and the Mavs threw a huge punch in the first quarter of Game 3. This is going to be one of my favorite bets for Game 4. Do you think they can replicate that and sustain that?
I'm not from Missouri, but I see when I believe. It is the show me state, and they ain't shown me that yet. Look, Game 1, not competitive, and Game 2 and 3 kind of followed the same script, where the Mavericks come out, they get off to a great start, and then the Celtics come back, make it a one-possession game by the end of the first quarter, and then it's the Celtics game from there on out. The Mavericks, they went on their run in the fourth quarter, but I will be surprised at this point if the Mavericks can put together a sustained enough stretch to be able to beat what has been, from wire to wire, the best team by far in the NBA this season. That's, of course, the Boston Celtics.
Tim, you don't know this, but I am from the Show Me State, Missouri, and we appreciate you showing us the inside scoop from Dallas. Thank you. Now to the Boston side of things. Celtics got in a practice today ahead of Game 4. Kristaps Porzingis on the court for activities with the team today. He, of course, suffered a left leg injury in the third quarter of Game 2. All right, Erin, let's go to the other locker room and the other Tim Bontemps with the Boston Celtics. And I want to start with this, Tim. The latest update, if any, on Kristaps Porzingis' status for Game 4?
Well, there isn't much of an update from today's media availabilities, Tyler, other than that Joe Mazzulla said Kristaps Porzingis is feeling a little better today and that he's continuing to do everything he can to be on the court in Game 4 on Friday night. Now, Mazzulla was asked, is the fact that the Boston Celtics are leading this series 3-0, will that impact in any way how the Celtics handle Porzingis' injury situation? He said no, that is not the way to look at it. He called it a passive way to look at the situation. He said you have to attack every game in the same manner. Porzingis is doing the same thing in terms of trying to get ready to play, and if he's able to go, he'll be out there on the court. But certainly with this very rare injury, obviously a pretty unique one from an NBA perspective, we don't really have any history of dealing with knowing exactly how this is going to go. I think it's safe to say the Celtics are probably going to be cautious with Porzingis moving forward here, and given the way they looked for most of Game 3, I think it's safe to say this team should be able to close the Mavs out and win this title, regardless of whether Kristaps Porzingis is able to come back or not.
Well, Tim, it also just feels like the finish line is in sight. The confetti is about to come down. What are the Celtics saying, at least, about closing out in this game rather than losing this one and potentially going back to Boston?
Well, you heard Tim MacMahon talking, Erin, about how it felt like pre-exit interviews for the Mavs, and it was the total opposite from the Boston Celtics. Jayson Tatum said the Celtics are as hungry as they've ever been talked about the fact that this is a team that has let opportunities slip away in the past, and that's something that has powered them through this season. And Jaylen Brown, who talked about how embarrassed he was with his own play in the Eastern Conference Finals last year against the Miami Heat when he went 6 for 43 from 3, didn't step up in Game 7 after Tatum sprained his ankle, as Boston tried to become the first team to ever come back from down 3-0 in a series to win in a best-of-7. He said that motivated him throughout the summer and has motivated him throughout these playoffs. And this Celtics team, really going back to the middle of the Eastern Conference Finals, has been in as good of a headspace as I've ever seen them in my 6 years around them. And they are totally locked in on what they have to do on Friday, which is to get another 48 minutes of quality play, get another win in this series, and raise that 18th championship banner to the TD Garden rafters. This is a group that over the last 8 years has played more games in the playoffs than any NBA team over an 8-year span in the history of the league without winning a title. They can smell erasing that mark from their resume, and I think these guys are going to be very motivated to go out Friday night and close the series out in a sweep.
Good times with Tim Bontemps from Dallas. We appreciate you dropping by, Tim.
ESPN